Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Witchcraft, the occult, extremist beliefs, murder. Tune in to Rogue Darkness each Friday and join host Raven as I uncover horrific crimes committed under the misconceptions and misunderstandings of witchcraft and other belief systems. I'll cover a wide range of crimes involving ritualistic killings and extremist beliefs to cult persuasion and supposed possession. Anything and everything that borders the line of horrifying. There's always three sides to a story. Side A, Side B, and then the truth. Let's uncover the truth together and explore the darkness of mankind, one crime at a time. Available wherever you get your podcast fix, simply by searching Rogue Darkness.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his way.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, how's it going, Dylan?
It's going great.
It's going great.
Yeah.
You sound enthusiastic. Are you ready to start the show?
Let's go live.
Look, dude, we have got some patrons to thank, so I'm excited. I'm in a great mood. We have these new patrons. Welcome, y'all. We've got Kanya, Nicole, and Angela.
Thank you. Thank you so much for supporting us at the Patreons. And we hope you enjoy all that ad-free and extra content.
Yeah, we're going to get a new Patreon out this week as well. We've gotten a few bonus episodes posted there on Patreon. So if you've ever thought about joining patreon.com, now is a great time to do that. It's patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. Dylan, are you okay over there? You look like you're having a moment of pain. Are you pained?
Yeah.
Is listening to the sound of my voice painful for you?
No, that warms my heart.
Welcome to marriage.
No, it's I'm sore. I went too hard in the gym yesterday.
I'm mad at you because I had a bad dream about you. Now it's made me feel kind of like annoyed with you.
So
it's one of those dreams where you like cheated on me and then broke up with me. And so then I woke up like pissed off at you because you were a dick in my dream.
But it's not real.
Well, I don't care.
This is real life.
Well, it's made my head feel messed up today, and now I'm viewing you through a skeptical lens.
Well, when you go to sleep tonight, I hope I apologize.
Well, you never do. That's the thing about dreams. You never do. Are you ready to get into today's case? This is going to be a two-parter.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
I've been ready.
All right. Margaret Ann Pahl was born on April 6th of 1908 near the village of Edgerton, Ohio. It was an area where farmers battled searing summer heat and stinging cold winters.
Oh, that sounds great.
There were droughts, floods, and challenges to those who lived alongside the St. Joseph River, not far from the Indiana border. And Dylan, I visited this area last summer and can attest that summer heat is, in fact, searing.
So it's very, very intense heat?
I was surprised. I mean, I guess, you think of the Midwest, and if you are not really familiar with the climate there, I didn't imagine it would be hot as the devil's balls, but guess what? It was. It was very, 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 very hot.
Well, I have to say, as being a Southerner all my life, we have I guess we make an assumption like, people do about areas. We assume the further you go north, it gets cooler.
Guess what you think?
Yeah, but it's not true.
No, because you end up somewhere like Michigan and it's the devil's butthole in the summer. Like, it's super hot.
Yeah.
It's hot in Massachusetts. Yes, absolutely. I think we take for granted like that we live in the only place that gets steaming hot in the summer. But of course, we're also battling that humidity that comes with the deep south.
Now, there certainly are different kinds of heat.
Yeah.
And when people say it's a dry heat, it is much more bearable, I think, because nice humid heat, oh my gosh. As soon as you step outside, you're just like clammy and your sweat doesn't evaporate.
We've had a little bit of that already this week.
Yes.
Where we live, it seems to skip from winter straight to summer weather. There's no spring. I kind of miss the mountain spring when you still have like cool mornings, cool evenings.
You can always count on a nice breeze.
Yeah, we don't have that anymore. No, it's just hot as fuck. So the Pahl family lived a lot like the Amish, like how the Amish live now. They had no electricity, no indoor plumbing, which I think, back in the early 1900s, this was pretty common. Margaret was one of 9 children.
Wow.
The Pahl family used horses and mules to plow the land in spring. Horse-drawn reapers harvested the crops in the fall. Frank and Catherine Pahl owned 200 acres of farmland where they grew wheat, corn, raised livestock like chickens, horses, and cows. The family used oil lanterns at night, and the only heat source was a wood stove. So again, I think a lot of families live this way at the turn of the century.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's not someone roughing it, if you will. That's just how most people live, short of affluent people.
I was going to say my family lived this way in the mid-century. I mean, this is the way my grandma grew up, and this was like all the way up until like the 60s before they really had electricity and indoor plumbing and some of the modern amenities we know today.
Well, just having running water in your house, and
It's a big deal.
Yeah, many places in the world today in 2025 don't have that, and that really is a luxury.
It's hard to imagine, right? As a child, Margaret was described as quiet, hardworking, and determined. Every morning before school, the children would do chores like milking cows. So can you imagine getting up at the crack of dawn, milking 3 or 4 cows before you go to school?
No.
Right? I mean, it's a little unimaginable in today's society.
All I'll be milking is my Frosted Flakes.
Mm-hmm. Then they walked 1.5 miles to a 1-room schoolhouse after having gotten up and done some hours of work before they go to school. They had further farm chores in the afternoons. At harvest, the children were expected to shock the grain. The Pahls were devout Catholics. Relatives like cousins were nuns and priests. Catherine Flegel, Margaret's sister, recalled that her parents, quote, didn't miss many services. So church was a really big part of their life. Now, from an early age, Margaret had a deep-seated belief in God, and she might someday become a nun. Like, this was something that she just kind of, I guess, felt a call. She was an ordinary child. I mean, she had friends, she played, she had a really good sense of humor, yet she had always felt this higher calling to serve God. In September of 1927, the Pahl family drove 90 miles east to Our Lady of the Pines, a convent and retreat center just south of Fremont, Ohio. 19-year-old Margaret Ann professed her vows to join the Sisters of Mercy, a religious order founded in Ireland in 1831, not to be confused with the band we saw last year.
I'm sure you would not confuse them with a covenant.
A convent?
A convent, that's right.
Or
witches.
Yeah. Now, Margaret had left behind all of her personal belongings, neatly packed and labeled for her younger sisters. She was always known as being neat and tidy, and her sister described Margaret as someone that needed everything just so. I think we've probably all known those people. She left her sister, Mary Casbert, a bright red jewelry box. So this is a young woman who has no qualms with leaving behind all of her personal possessions, gifting those to her sisters to go join a convent.
Wow, that's a really bold, brave move, I think. To be able to just walk away. You're basically saying this calling, this higher purpose I feel deep inside is more important to you than all these worldly possessions.
Absolutely. Sister Margaret Ann spent 2 years as a novitiate. I'm not very good at this. I don't
Is that a rookie?
I don't speak Catholic. Basically, yeah, Dylan, it's like a rookie nun, followed by 3 more years in the convent before she professed her final vows. I know, like, when you want to become a nun, there are kind of a series of steps. You don't just become a nun right off the bat. You kind of do this early thing where you're the rookie nun, and you kind of make your way through a little process, and then in a few years, you take your final vows, and you're a full-fledged nun. So yeah, maybe she's like a nun apprentice at this time. She took a vow of chastity, poverty, obedience, and service of persons who were sick, poor, and uneducated, which were the vows of the Sisters of Mercy. At first, she took the name Sister Mary Annunciata and wore a ring to symbolize that she was betrothed to Jesus Christ. I had to stop recording just then because I was like plagued with a coughing fit, and I think it's God punishing me because I don't know anything about the Catholic Church and I'm mispronouncing everything.
Oh my God, he was choked up on the Lord.
Margaret completed her nursing training at St. Rita's Hospital in Lima, Ohio. The hospital was opened by the Sisters of Mercy in 1918 and was originally founded to treat victims of the influenza epidemic that claimed 20 million lives worldwide. With intelligence and a dependable personality, Sister Margaret advanced quickly into leadership positions. She was promoted to floor supervisor in 1933 and was then transferred 2 years later to Toledo's Mercy Hospital, where she was appointed assistant superintendent of nurses. She then spent a year teaching high school science at a Catholic school. At 29, Margaret was named superintendent of nurses at Mercy Hospital in Toledo, which is a pretty big deal. During World War II, Margaret was sent to Tiffin, Ohio, where she worked as a floor supervisor at another Mercy hospital. And by 1948, she was promoted to the top position at the hospital, serving as a supervisor and an administrator. In 1959, she was transferred to Toledo to run St. Charles Hospital, one of the city's largest medical facilities. Margaret was considered old school and was a perfectionist. She set high standards for herself and got the job done. She expected those around her to meet expectations and was quick to let staff know if they were not rising to the occasion.
So she took her position and she took it seriously, it sounds like.
She did. She wanted things done exactly the way she wanted it. Margaret prayed often, but also had a very big heart. Yet she is also known for speaking her mind. I mean, she didn't really mind stating her opinion at all. So, you know, there was kind of like these two sides of Margaret. The only outside activity that Margaret seemed to enjoy was visiting her family in Edgerton. She would drive her nephew's Corvette when she was in town visiting.
Oh, wow.
She also indulged with opera music. So, you know, that was kind of her outside interests beyond the church. At the age of 63, which it was in 1971, Margaret returned to Mercy Hospital in Toledo. However, she had stepped back from her role as an administrator and focused on pastoral care, serving as the sacristan, the person responsible for making preparations for Mass in the hospital's chapel. And though she was steadily losing her hearing, Sister Margaret continued working diligently to keep the chapel clean and ready, as she found it rewarding to rise early and clean God's house. Every day, she made sure there was a supply of communion wafers, wine, anointing oil, holy water, candles, and chalices. On April 5th of 1980, that was a Holy Saturday, the day before Easter and her 72nd birthday. On Holy Saturday, there was no early morning Mass at Mercy Hospital, just a late afternoon service. In 1980, the 7th floor of Mercy Hospital served as a convent that housed 17 nuns who were all trained nurses. The sisters lived and worked around the sick and dying. Each sister had her own room, along with a small chapel for daily prayer. There were 2 kitchens on the 7th floor, a common area, and a large bathroom with like multiple showers, so like a communal bathroom. Most days, Sister Margaret was up before dawn, preparing the chapel for religious services. But Holy Saturday was different. On this morning, the only task Sister Margaret had was to strip the altars of religious decorations, a symbol of the somberness of the day and a reflection of Christians mourning over the death of their Savior. She was allowed an extra 30 minutes of sleep. So Sister Margaret arose at 5:30 a.m.
Wow.
She got to sleep in late, Dylan, and late being 5:30 a.m. The petite woman showered and quickly dressed in the Sisters of Mercy uniform, which was a blue sleeveless jumper over a white blouse and a black veil tucked over her hair. Due to the Easter weekend, many nuns and student nurses were either sleeping late or they had gone home for the weekend. The hospital was minimally staffed for the holiday. The first floor wing of the hospital, where the main chapel was located, was unusually quiet. Sister Margaret walked to the nuns' dining area, picked up an empty tray, and carried it to the sacristy next to the St. Joseph's Chapel, the last room in the west wing. In the small sacristy, she gathered supplies, placed them on this tray, and then carried it into the chapel, kind of sitting it like on a front pew, so that these items would be easily accessible while she was, doing her work, readying the chapel, cleaning up, setting everything up. Sister Margaret returned to the dining room and ordered breakfast from the only other person present, Audrey Garraway. Garraway was a cafeteria worker from Jamaica. In silence, the nun hastily ate her breakfast, which consisted of a grapefruit, bran cereal, and coffee. At around 6:45, she finished breakfast up and told Audrey it was time to go, quote, fix up the chapel.
How did I know her breakfast would be very, very plain?
I don't know, Dylan. How'd you know?
Grapefruit, bran cereal, and coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds healthy. Sounds like a breakfast we should be having.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat that.
No, you're going to go fry some sausage up, aren't you?
Well, yeah. See, I just tell myself that's protein. I'm getting sausage and eggs. And, if I'm feeling sassy or if it's a cheap breakfast, I would have like a waffle or something with some maple syrup.
If it's a cheap breakfast.
Cheap.
Oh, I thought you said a cheap breakfast. And I was like, since when are waffles cheap, bud? And time consuming.
It's so much work and putting.
You gotta get out the waffle maker and then you gotta clean it up. So good though. Sister Margaret went about her day of cleaning the chapel. And like I mentioned before, she was hard of hearing. And though she was approaching retirement, she kept putting it off because she found her work as the sacristan very fulfilling. It kept her busy. And it was also like a little bit more relaxing than the previous jobs she had held in nursing and administration. Those were very stressful jobs, and this one really wasn't very stressful for her, but she found it rewarding. So she kind of kept on working. Now, the hearing problem was a growing concern because Sister Margaret was having trouble carrying on basic conversations. Now, due to this hearing issue, Sister Margaret had no idea that someone had entered the chapel and had kind of creeped into the sacristy, which is kind of like a big room where she keeps all of her supplies, right? Now, as Sister Margaret stood on her tiptoes, she's on a chair on her tiptoes, trying to reach a top shelf. She must have at some point felt a piece of cloth drop over the top of her head. And by now the cloth had already tightened around her neck. The perpetrator snapped the cloth tight, which broke 2 small bones in Sister Margaret's neck. Once the nun went limp, the assailant lowered her onto the terrazzo floor. Sister Margaret was still alive, barely.
Damn.
At this point.
So she's been attacked.
Kneeling over her body, the assailant removed the cloth, which was a large white linen altar cloth, and laid it out, kind of folded over onto the woman's torso. A crucifix was removed from the cabinet and placed over Sister Margaret's heart, upside down. A letter opener was used like a dagger to plunge into the nun's chest. And we're going to get into this letter opener, and initially the detectives, they're not really sure what the weapon is. But I've gone ahead and gave you a little spoiler here. It's a letter opener. It was used like a dagger to plunge into the nun's chest, and when the blade was pulled out, blood seeped through the altar cloth. She was stabbed again, just above the collarbone. This woman was stabbed a total of 31 times.
Damn, that's so... We've talked about this before, but stabbing someone over and over and over, and even, I guess, sometimes likely post-mortem, it's just very vicious, and it takes a real monster to do something like that.
Now, after the killer had completed this task of mutilating this woman
and posing her.
Well, let's slow down.
Oh, I'm sorry, with the cross and all that. I mean, that's pretty.
Okay, I know, but just slow down for a minute. The killer then rolled up the hem of the nun's dress, like to her bra. He yanked the girdle and pantyhose down off of her until they dangled like from her right ankle. Then he took the crucifix and violated her corpse with it.
Oh, my God.
Sister Madeline Marie Gordon was glad to get this extra hour of sleep on a chilly April morning. And after readying herself, she went to the cafeteria for breakfast. She spoke with Father Swiatecki, a large boisterous priest who was kind of easygoing and liked to talk. Sister Madeline Marie was the chapel's organist. She explained to Father Swiatecki that after breakfast, she would be checking the sheet music for the service. When she approached the chapel, the door was open and the lights were on. When she approached, a white cloth was lying on the floor, just kind of outside the chapel door. She assumed housekeeping might have dropped like a pillowcase by accident or whatever, so she picked it up. And as she entered the chapel, she had this kind of odd feeling sweep over her. On the front pew, she saw Sister Phillip, another nun, silently praying. The decorations, which were supposed to be, taken down for this holiday, were only half removed, and so the job was only half done. And Sister Madeline thought this was odd because she didn't see any sign of Sister Margaret. And it looked like Sister Margaret had started the job but hadn't finished it.
Right.
So again, just a little strange. She spotted a green tray with a lot of items on it, kind of resting at the front pew. So she assumed for some reason Sister Margaret had stopped working kind of in the middle of the job for some reason. She didn't really know what was happening. She pulled out her rosary and began reciting the morning prayer. Afterwards, she went over to the organ to check the sheet music for the Holy Saturday service. Going over the music list, there was nothing written down about a closing song. Father Gerald Robinson, who was responsible for selecting music, must have forgotten to write it down. It was 8:15 when Sister Madeline went to find a phone. She needed to speak with Father Robinson regarding the music. The sacristy, which was closest to the chapel, a room with a phone that was closest to the chapel, was locked, which she thought was odd because, again, if Sister Margaret's working, she's kind of in and out of this room. Like, why has she got the door locked? So then, of course, she thinks it's strange, and she's like, well, maybe she had to leave and she was afraid to leave this door unlocked for whatever reason. It just so happened that Sister Madeline had a key to the sacristy and was able to unlock the door. When she entered the room, it was dark, but she noticed something on the floor. The hospital had been recently conducting CPR classes, and she thought someone had left the practice dummy in the sacristy. The only light in the room was coming kind of from the chapel. So she bends down to get a closer look at the mannequin, but screams in horror when she realizes it's Sister Margaret Ann.
Oh my gosh.
Now, as soon as Sister Madeline screamed, Sister Phillip jumped up from praying. Sister Madeline shouted, Sister Margaret Ann has been raped. Now, at this point, Sister Phillip has jumped up. She's kind of run to the sacristy, and that's when she finds the nun lying on the floor. Her arms were straight by her sides, and the legs were flat on the ground, kind of going straight out from the body. A very strange position.
Well, it's kind of an unnatural position.
So when you mentioned posing, I was like, wait a minute, there's more. Because she's almost posed in this very unnatural way. I mean, no one just dies and falls down in this very straight position.
Right.
The victim's face was badly swollen. Sister Madeline Marie was shouting kind of uncontrollably in the chapel. I mean, who wouldn't be completely shocked and afraid and, kind of overcome with emotion? With most of the offices empty due to the holiday, there were only a few nuns and Father Swiatecki who heard the commotion. They jolted down the hallway from the dining area to see what could be wrong. Sister Phyllis Ann Gerald, administrator and CEO of Mercy Hospital, learned that Sister Margaret Ann was dead on the sacristy floor. Her first instinct was to perform CPR or try to save the nun's life, but she quickly judged that it was too late. Though she had worked saving patients' lives for decades, and she had seen many a patient expire, the scene in the sacristy was unlike anything she'd ever witnessed. It left her with a sick feeling in the pit of her stomach. She said, quote, the horror, it was just the weirdness of it. She described the body as being in a ritualistic type of position. It seemed abnormal for Sister Margaret Ann's arms and legs to be so straight. She said, quote, people don't usually die very straight.
And she's right.
Another peculiarity noted by the witnesses was the lack of blood. Sister Margaret Ann had been stabbed over 30 times, but there was very little blood. The majority of the blood was about a 9-inch pool just around her head, but that was it. And so for her to be stabbed 31 times and there to be such a little amount of blood, that was very strange, very weird.
Well, what does that mean to you? Because I have an idea.
That she was stabbed post-mortem?
Yeah, that one of the first few strokes killed her, stopped her heart, and then the rest of it was post-mortem.
Yeah, well, I mean, the strangulation almost had her there, so it didn't take much to kill this poor lady. A Mr. Swift call was announced over the hospital's alert system, which indicated a patient needed serious help.
So it's Dr. Allcome call.
Yeah. Come one, come all. We need your help. 2 police officers with the city of Toledo happened to be finishing breakfast in the cafeteria when they received the telephone call, but it was the end of their shift. They worked like the midnight to 8 shift, so they were almost off duty. They were a little reluctant to answer this call. One of them said he expected it to be something, quote, screwy, like a fight in the waiting room between drunk people.
So they're just tired. They're ready to go home.
Yeah.
Or ready to get some rest. Figure some run-of-the-mill BS.
Yes. Just something ridiculous that's going to keep them there longer. However, the call was alerting them that a nun had died in the chapel. And the officer said, quote, right when I hung up, a nurse came running into the cafeteria and said, we've got a dead nun in the sacristy. Now, it didn't take long for the officers to see that they had a murdered nun on their hands. There was nothing natural about this death. When one of the officers named Davidson, who was first on the scene, asked the other nuns kind of like, who do you think would have done this? Or, you know, they kind of talking a little bit off record, chatting. Several of them said Father Robinson or, quote, the priest.
Oh, gosh.
Officer Davidson also had a concern that valuable evidence had been destroyed by the rush of nuns and medical workers who had tried to help. I mean, it was understandable that they came in, they tried to help, they thought they were doing something good here. But he's also like, oh no, this crime scene has been destroyed, basically.
Well, and you're dealing with people who are used to helping.
Right.
Helping others, you know, for whatever reason. So it's just natural for them to, rush in and try to do.
And this is one of their own.
And this is one of their own.
So they're definitely feeling like they need to step in here. But if the killer had left fingerprints or footprints, I mean, the integrity of the crime scene was definitely tampered with at this point, right? The lead detective on the case would be a man named Arthur Marks, who was known for his mustache and snazzy dress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He, I guess, moonlighted at a men's clothing store where he was able to get discounted suits. So he was kind of known as a fashionista. Yes. Now, he told Sister Phyllis they needed to set up a command post inside the hospital. She offered a boardroom just a few doors away from the chapel, where they could kind of set up this command post. Detective Marks had investigated hundreds of homicides and had a reputation as being no nonsense and like a bit of a bulldog. Tenacious, he's not going to give up, and he's really good at what he does. Others called him a cop's cop. He was also one of the few on the force who had used deadly force when necessary. So, again, he's got a bit of a reputation. Fuck around, find out kind of guy.
Yeah, he sounds like a real cop,
like a Bosch or something.
Yeah, I'm a man's man.
Now, the murder of a nun hurt him deeply, and he felt that she did not deserve this kind of fate. Now, while they're, kind of initially checking out this crime scene, a call comes over the police radio that less than a mile away at the Greyhound bus station, there was a man acting suspiciously. So they were ordered to go to the Greyhound station. When the officers arrived, they found no person fitting the description of this alleged suspicious person. And no one at the bus station had made the call. So they wasted 20 minutes sort of investigating this ruse.
So who called it in, I wonder?
Well, I don't know, Dylan, but, this is what we call a red herring. Now, years later, Officer Davidson will push to reopen Sister Margaret's cold case, and we're going to discuss more of that in a few minutes, and we're going to definitely get into that in our part 2. Now, Davidson theorized that police and the diocese conspired to protect the Catholic Church and the true killer's identity, so we have a lot to talk about in part 2. It's going to be amazing, so you're going to want to stick around.
Well, no, look, that's ridiculous notion that the Catholic Church would go out of its way to protect people that have harmed others.
No.
I mean, it's just, come on.
They would never.
Are you writing some kind of a fantasy novel at this point?
Yes, I am. Now, immediately, everyone at the hospital starts pointing fingers at Father Gerald Robinson. It seemed no one liked him. Everybody was saying kind of in whispers that they knew the priest did it. Everyone at Mercy seemed to hate Father Robinson.
Wow.
Yeah. But moving along. So evidence was collected, including fingerprints and hair, which was sent to the crime lab. Detective Marks felt it was safe to assume the killer was someone who had known Sister Margaret Ann. The nun was 5'2" and weighed about 135 pounds. So it didn't take much to murder this elderly woman, but the crime was kind of bizarre in its overkill.
Right.
He felt.
Well, and that makes them think it's personal.
The choking itself had been enough to murder the old lady, but then the stabbing and the way the killer had tried to degrade the woman in death by pulling down her underclothes to expose her pubic area was personal and curious. Detective Marks speculated the killer must have really disliked the nun. The possible motive of robbery was ruled out right away, as nothing had been stolen from the sacristy, not even gold-plated chalices or any of the other valuables that were held there. Father Robinson, the hospital's chaplain, was nowhere to be found. So Sister Phyllis, now if you remember, she's like the CEO of the hospital, she immediately calls his residence, which is located in the hospital. The 41-year-old priest, who was a Toledo native, said he had just gotten out of the shower. When he was informed about the possible rape and murder, Robinson said he would dress and be there soon. But guess what, Dylan? He never did show up at the scene.
See, everyone else is shocked, rushing to the scene, trying to figure out what's happening. And this is very suspicious behavior.
The hospital employed 1,400 people. Detective Marks deduced that he would not need to interview everyone, and instead he wanted to focus on the employees who had been on the night shift and the people working this weekend and this specific holiday weekend. So that would trim down the list a pretty good bit. I mean, can you imagine if you had to go interview 1,400 people? That's a lot.
That is a lot.
And probably unnecessary. I mean, I think he's on the right track here. Now, a housekeeper named Valerie Burning was called in to clean up the chapel and sacristy after police wrapped up their search and initial investigation. 2 days later, when she was set to clean Father Robinson's apartment, she's, doing her little thing, dusting, cleaning up, making the bed, and that's when she spots a 9-inch sword-shaped letter opener just sitting on top of his desk. And for some reason, this letter opener sent chills down the 23-year-old woman's spine. She had this bad feeling sweep over her. She quickly left the apartment and never went back.
Damn.
Yeah. So that's interesting, right? Over the next 3 weeks, 600 interviews were conducted. Most of the interviews were not beneficial to the case. One doctor, Jack Barron, described to officers that he had rushed to the chapel after hearing that Mr. Swift call and had accidentally taken a wrong turn, like down another hallway. And that's when he had spotted a priest who was maybe 35 to 45 years old, wearing clerical garb. The priest made eye contact with the doctor, quote, in a stare that went right through me. The description was a match for Father Robinson. Now, Dylan, you're taking this in.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are your thoughts so far?
Well, with the information you've presented thus far, I think you would have to be wondering about Father Robinson, right? Everyone kind of sounds like he's already not that popular. People don't really like him. Everyone else was up and about, it seems, and he's the one who's still taking a shower. Oh, I'll be right over. He doesn't show up. I mean, it seems very suspicious to me. Suspicious behavior.
A lab technician named Grace Jones, not to be confused with the awesome 80s icon, she had seen a priest walking out of the chapel carrying a duffel bag. She wasn't sure of the time, but knew it was sometime like after 7 a.m. When Robinson was finally interviewed, he told detectives he had been in his 2-room apartment residence at the hospital the entire morning. He was drying off after a shower when Sister Phyllis alerted him there had been a murder. He claimed he had never left the apartment until the call came in. Yet Detective Marks and his team of detectives felt something was just not quite right with Father Robinson. Now, the autopsy report was grim, as you can imagine, Dylan. Sister Margaret had 6 stab wounds to the left, I believe it was the left side of her face, 15 wounds to the left part of her neck, and 9 wounds to the chest. The instrument used was a blade at least 3 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide. It didn't have a flat blade like most knives. It had a blade with 4 sides, kind of cross-shaped, described as diamond or a kite shape.
Okay. So it's
that kind of makes me think of like a screwdriver.
Well, yeah, it makes me think of I don't know if our listeners have ever seen an old-timey nail. It's almost square in shape. It's not flat. It's not smooth. It's almost 3 or 4-sided, if you will.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, detectives looked into the possibility that a pair of scissors, like maybe sewing scissors, could have been used. The pathologists would not say with 100% certainty whether the scissors could have been the murder weapon, just said, well, it's a possibility. Now, the coroner thought the wounds to Sister Margaret's face were made with an instrument much sharper than a pair of scissors. The pathologist did not believe that a pair of scissors could have done this kind of damage.
Yeah, because they typically have like a blunted end on them,
They do. 2 days later, Sister Margaret Ann's funeral was held at Our Lady of the Pines Retreat Center at the St. Bernardine Chapel on April 8th of 1980. Over 200 people attended. Father Robinson, who had worked with Sister Margaret Ann for 6 years, would lead the funeral service. Now, during the service, a massive storm swept through northern Ohio region, knocking out power to about 20,000 homes. People described this funeral service and this storm as like rattling the chapel, like shaking the windows.
Damn.
Like the wind was blowing out of control at very high speeds. Sister Margaret's brother-in-law, Paul Casebear, said, quote, "It wouldn't have surprised me one bit if the roof hadn't come off the church."
So it's just this out of the ordinary strong storm, right?
Yeah. Now, she was buried at the St. Bernardine Cemetery. All of the Sisters of Mercy from the Midwest region are buried there. Sister Margaret Ann Pahl's body would remain there for 24 years until May of 2004, when investigators exhumed the body for DNA evidence. Now, as the days passed in the investigation, and I know I'm kind of giving a little bit away here, but we're really going to get into a lot of this in the second part of the story. Now, as the days passed into this investigation, the trail seemed to grow cold. Even a $24,000 reward offered did little but just bring out the crazies. People called in accusing their bosses of the crime. A spurned gay lover accused his ex-boyfriend of hating the Catholic Church, so he must be the killer.
Cody did it. I know it.
Yes.
I know it in my heart.
I know it was Levi. Now, the lack of evidence was frustrating for investigators, but it seemed that all fingers were pointing at Father Robinson. Finally, on April 18th, Detective Marks paid Robinson a visit. He noted the priest had very little to say. The initial greeting was brusque, and the priest he just didn't have a very good personality. He seemed like a little bit of a dickhead, right? Now, grilled the priest for 8 hours. Investigators noted inconsistencies in his statements about his activities and whereabouts on the morning of April 5th. Afterward, Robinson would claim that the detectives had been, quote, forceful during the interview, but admitted they had never, outright accused him of murder. Now, at the end of the interview, Robinson was in a bit of an agitated state, and he told Detective Marks that someone had approached him on Wednesday and confessed that he had killed the nun, this random person.
So he offers this information up only after being questioned. Is that
8 hours?
Right. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, Detective Marks knew that anything divulged to a priest during confession is held with the strictest confidence. A priest would never reveal what was said during confession, and if a priest did tell, he could be excommunicated from the Catholic Church. So after being pressed by Detective Marks, Robinson then admitted he had made the whole thing up. No one had confessed. He was lying. Detective Marks asked, "Father, why would you make up such a story?" And Father Robinson replied, "I was trying to protect myself."
Okay.
Yeah. Now, as the detectives went to search Robinson's apartment, Father Swiatek, now they're walking to the apartment to go search it. Father Swiatek yells at the priest, quote, "Tell them what you know. Just tell them the truth."
Damn.
Detectives kind of found this showcase to be a bit more than strange.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine what you're thinking if you are the investigators? I mean, this is like something out of a scripted movie.
Well, of course, when the detectives are like, "What was that about?" Father Robinson's like, "I don't know. I don't know." The letter opener belonging to Robinson was taken into evidence. Now, the crime lab revealed that the letter opener had been wiped clean. They did some chemical tests, trying to find blood or fingerprints, all of that stuff. And guess what, Dylan? There were no fingerprints on it, which is very out of the ordinary if someone is using it regularly to open letters. It was devoid of fingerprints, dust, or any kind of contact. The letter opener was described by the lab tech as, quote, being sumptuously clean.
Sumptuously?
Yes. So it sounds like somebody really took the time to clean the fuck out of this letter opener.
Which is abnormal.
Is the layman's terms here.
Yeah, but that's something that lays around on someone's desk or bureau or whatever.
Yes.
And it's typically not something you would wipe down because there's no reason for it to be dirty.
No.
You're just opening letters with it.
Yes. So clear of any fingerprints. Strange, right?
Yeah.
Robinson was subjected to 2 polygraph exams, both of which came back inconclusive. After the second polygraph, he was interviewed again. And about an hour into this interview, the Monsignor of the, Toledo, Dionysus? The diocese?
Diocese.
The Dionysus is a Greek god or something.
Oh,
right?
really?
Dionysus.
That's awesome, dude.
Diocese. That's the term I was looking for.
Yeah.
Along with an attorney arrived. The deputy police chief interrupted this interview, which is highly unusual. You typically, protocol is you don't barge in an interview room when detectives are interrogating someone, right?
Right.
So this deputy police chief arrives. He barges in the interview room, grabs Father Robinson, and escorts him out to meet the Monsignor. Well, these detectives are just like, what? It seemed the interview was officially over. Robinson is whisked away. And with that, the case goes cold for 24 years. And we are going to pick this back up on part 2.
Oh, my gosh.
What you think, Dylan?
So the investigators are just left with all these abnormal things happening. Their boss basically barging in, grabbing the suspect, turning him over to someone else, and he's just gone, and that's just the end of it.
That's it. You
Gosh.
nailed it.
I mean, what would you be thinking if you were the investigator? You'd be like, what is
Well, this is our top suspect so far, it seems.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we all know that the polygraph exam is, we've said it before, junk science.
Subjective at the very least.
But the fact that he's inconclusive on both of these.
And he's acting weird.
He's not past them with flying colors. I mean, inconclusive shows like, yeah, we don't know. We don't know if this guy did it or not, right? We can't tell if he's being honest or telling the truth. You've got this letter opener, which seems to have this design that matches the wounds, right? It's been wiped clean. He never showed up to the crime scene. He's behaving suspiciously. Everyone's whispering about this guy.
Yeah.
It seems that for whatever reason, nobody liked him, and he's like the top of everyone's list of like who could have done this. And
they're putting pressure on him, trying to, turn the screws, if you will.
And then the Catholic Church somehow is able to swoop in and take him away and shield him under their, robe of innocence or whatever.
Their veil of shadows.
That's it. Yes.
Gosh. Okay.
And we know, I mean, I'm not trying to disparage Catholicism or the church, but I mean, we know the Catholic Church is plagued with problems of this variety, that members, of the clergy have been found guilty of crimes, and that there have been mass cover-ups. I mean, we've all known that. It's been happening for years and years.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any organization, except this one just happens to be thousands of years old and just insanely powerful. It's the questionable actions by the leadership have certainly been documented many, many times over the years. So it would really makes you wonder.
All right, Dylan. Well, we will be back with a part 2. I know I've given a little bit away here in part 1, but I just want to entice you to come back and listen to part 2 because it gets even more interesting.
Yeah, I need to know what happens now.
Absolutely.
And thanks again to our new patrons.
Thanks to our new patrons.
And our old patrons and all our listeners. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out our website, mountainmurderspodcast.com. From there, you can access Patreon. We also have links to our merch store. We have some new merch designs, so you want to make sure you check that out. Got some really cute designs for spring and summer. You're looking for a little tank top action. You need a cool shirt to wear over your beach gear when you go to the pool or going to the ocean, or you just want to be really cool and rep Mountain Murders. Got some great designs. Check that out.
Check it out.
All right, Dylan, it's been great talking to you. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we love our patrons and we love our listeners.
All those things are true, and until next time.
Bye.
Bye.